After weeks and months of filling out forms, collecting evidence, writing statements, attending appointments, organizing and submitting your claim, attending your CMP exam, the long-awaited VA decision letter arrives. Now what? So welcome back. My name is Mike. I am a 28-year Army veteran who also served as a County Veteran Service Officer for several years. And so today we're going to do part one of a two-part series on the VA decision letter, also known as the VA rating decision letter or the VA notification letter or VA award letter. So in this part one, we'll cover the three components of the VA decision letter, the purpose of each component, as well as some pro tips associated with each. Note, like before, this is not legal advice, just me sharing my knowledge as a County Veteran Service Officer, but also as a veteran who's actually gone through the VA claims process. So let's get started. Your VA decision letter arrives in the mail and it'll look something like this, in an envelope of this size. So you'll open it and you'll see many pages of documents. And for most, it'll be very confusing on what this is and what do I do with it and what information is actually important. So very briefly, I'm going to break down the three sections of the VA decision letter, and then we'll do a deeper dive on each one. So the first section is the actual, what we call status and money. It's the bottom line up front, where the VA actually makes their decision, and it looks sort of like this. Okay, so the second section is the core. It's the most important part of the VA decision letter, and it's the actual narrative. And it'll start looking like this. Key thing is the seal on the front. Unfortunately, it's numbered. You may have page 1 of 7, 2 of 7, 3 of 7. So you know it's complete when you get to page 7 of 7. And then the third section is really a boiler template. It's if you do not agree with the VA's decision, it's what steps you can actually take. And this is a boilerplate. This is in every decision letter, regardless of your actual claim. So we'll start with a deep dive on each one of those. So first, let's start with the what we called the status and money decision, the bottom line up front. So the key things in there is first, the VA will tell you their decision. They will tell you if it's granted, if it's denied, if it's continued, deferred, or remanded. So that will give you a decision. They would tell you your combined rating from the ones that the conditions that were actually granted. It will tell you the effective date of your actual claim for the compensation of the ones that they're granted, and then it will give you the corresponding amount associated with your VA disability percentage rating. So some pro tips on those. First is ensure that this section includes a decision on each one of the conditions you file for. Many times, veterans will file for multiple conditions on a single claim. Let's say you filed for 5. There should be 5 decisions outlined on this part of the letter. So you may find that 3 were granted, 2 were denied, or 2 could be granted, 2 denied, 1 deferred, or any combination thereof. So first, ensure that you've got corresponding number of conditions with number of decisions. Second is the effective date. As we discussed in previous videos, your effective date, if you did the intent to file, will be the date that the VA received that intent to file. If it's electronically, same day. If you mailed it in, the day they received your intent to file by mail. If you didn't do the intent to file, your effective date is the date they received your actual claim. This gets more complicated for appeals. Using our example, if you applied for 5 conditions, 3 were approved, 2 were denied. So you go through the process and then you appeal, and then you get those 2 overturned in your favor. They're granted. So now that decision letter, you need to check if you filed your appeal on time in accordance with the process outlined by the VA. Your effective date should correspond with your initial claim. So please ensure that your effective date corresponds with the date of that actual condition when it was first claimed, because this could be a substantial amount of money of back pay depending on the decision and the actual rating percentage. The next 2 tips, we'll do a deeper video on that, but very briefly is one I wanted to point out. Pro tip number 3 is if your combined rating is at 30%, that's when you can actually claim dependents to increase your actual compensation. And there are several forms for that. As you have noticed, the VA has not requested any dependency data up until now. Your 526 EZ does not have dependency data. It's not automatic. They're going to know what kind of dependents or how many dependents you're actually going to claim. So there's several different forms for just ones living in your household, spouse, minor children. There's another form, 21674, if you got a dependent child that's going to college between the ages of 18 and 23 full-time. And then maybe parents, if you've got parents that you have guardianship over and they're dependent upon you. So that 30% combined rating, which will be listed on your decision letter, is the trigger point for your eligibility to apply for that. Pro tip 4 related is if you hit 50%, that's when you can have corresponding concurrent retirement pay if you retired from the military, and also for your VA compensation. Below that, it's a dollar for dollar exchange, and we'll go over that in a different video. But it's information, that information will be found on that first section of your VA decision letter. So next, we'll go to the core rating decision. This is the most important document in the actual decision letter. This is the one document that you will need to keep forever. It's just as important for appeals, it's important for secondary claims, it's important for increases and possibly potential survivor's benefits. So of all the documents in your decision letter, this is a section that you must maintain, and I would recommend keeping with your DD 214. So they will start off with an introduction of the letter. Again, I'll show this one. You can tell again by the seal that you know that that's the actual section. And then they will go in and list all of the evidence that they utilized to make their decision. And this is just a quick example. You see, it's just a detail. Everything from 4138, intent to file, lay statements, service treatment records, whatever. Here is where you stop and you do a crosswalk. Did they have all the evidence that I presented, or did they list it and utilize it for their decision on my actual claim? So that's very, very important to make sure that they had all the evidence that you actually presented. So next, they will give you per condition. So if you had 5 conditions, they'll give you 5 different sections of their reasoning for the decision. They will give you their favorable findings. You know, they may favorably find that you actually do have a certain type of disability, but they may disagree that it was actually service connected. So that's actually in there. So this section will tell you where to start from for any follow-on actions, especially if you're going to actually appeal. And so this is where I always, when I had veteran or surviving spouse come in to see me, and they would very quickly, especially if I have not seen them before, they would tell me what they wanted to do. They wanted to appeal, do a secondary claim, and they wanted to maybe increase their benefits. I said, great, I know where you want to go, but I need your decision letter to tell me where we're starting from. So that VA decision letter tells any county veteran service officer, any representative, even yourself, of where you're starting from for the next step. This is where the VA left off, and that's where you have to start from, whether you agree or don't agree. This is their decision. We make in our appeal our next steps based upon that point. And I cannot stress that enough, that this is a very important document, and please keep that with all your other important records permanently. Also in there, they will tell you why they rated you at X percentage versus X plus 10 or 20% rating. They will tell you why. And that's very critical, because it may be a positive decision. They may have rated in your favor, but they may not have rated you the severity as high as you think that they should. So that is actually in this section of the letter. And then the third section, again, that's really just the boilerplate. It's your right to seek review or appeal. And this is in every single claims letter. It doesn't pertain to your case particularly, like the first two sections. The first two are related directly to your claim. The third section is what actions you can take if you disagree, or you want to review, or you want to take, additional steps. So in summary, the VA decision letter is not a final destination for many. It's just the decision the VA has made based upon the evidence that they collected and you provided for that actual claim. It is the starting point for any additional actions after that. That's why it's very, very important, especially the actual second section. It is important to keep these records. It's important to make sure that you have family members that know where those documents are. And I'm going to do another video later on the key documents that you should always keep related to VA claims. And so our next video, in part 2, we will go through how to push the pause button and analyze before you act based upon your actual decision letter. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. If there's any other topics you would like for me to cover, please put those in the comments below. Also, if this is of value, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you.